The first light of dawn broke over the rolling hills of Willow Creek, Tennessee, casting a golden glow across the quiet streets of Veterans Hollow. At 68, Colonel Marcus Thompson, a retired Army legend, rose with the sun, a habit carved into his bones from 35 years of military service. His modest home, tucked into a corner of the veterans' community, was a sanctuary of simplicity. Framed photos of comrades from long ago battles lined the walls, but his medals, earned through courage that few could fathom, remained tucked away in a drawer. Marcus believed a man's actions should speak louder than any ribbon or star. This Sunday morning held special weight. It marked the 38th anniversary of his ritual motorcycle rides through the winding roads of Willow Creek County. The open road was his escape, a place where the weight of the world, its prejudices, its expectations, fell away with the roar of his 1987 Harley-Davidson. The bike, a gift from his unit upon retirement, gleamed in the garage, its chrome polished to a mere finish, every dent a story of freedom earned. Marcus moved through his morning with the precision of a soldier. He brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead, ate a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast, and checked the weather. Clear skies, crisp autumn air, perfect for a long ride. As he sipped his coffee, his mind wandered to his journey. From a kid in a rough Memphis neighborhood to one of the highest-ranking black officers in his division, discrimination had shadowed every step, grueling basic training, promotions that demanded twice the effort of his peers. But Marcus had fought through with grit and integrity, never compromising who he was. In the garage, he ran his hand over the Harley's leather seat, worn smooth by decades of rides. The bike was more than metal and chrome. It was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the battles he'd won, both abroad and at home. As he polished the tank, memories flickered, missions in distant lands, soldiers lost under his command, and quieter fights against bias within the ranks. He'd faced it all with a quiet strength, letting his record speak for itself. Marcus picked up his phone to call his son, Lieutenant Daniel Thompson, stationed at Fort Bragg. Their Sunday calls were a lifeline, bridging the miles between them. "Morning, Pops," Daniel's voice crackled through, warm but laced with concern. "Heading out on that bike again?" Marcus chuckled. "You know it, son. Roads are calling and the weather's perfect." Daniel's tone shifted. "Just watch yourself out there, especially in Willow Creek. You've heard about those stops. Folks getting pulled over for no reason." Marcus brushed it off, though he knew the truth in his son's words. Willow Creek had a reputation for trouble, especially for black drivers. "I've been riding these roads since before you were born, Danny. I know every curve and cop trap. I'll be fine." He didn't mention his rank or his Medal of Honor, a habit of humility that sometimes frustrated Daniel. "You're not just some guy on a bike, Pops," Daniel said, pride cutting through his worry. "You're a retired colonel with a chest full of medals." "They don't know who they're messing with." Marcus laughed softly. "They see an old black man on a nice bike. Been dealing with that my whole life. I've got it handled." The call ended with promises to check in later, and Marcus turned to his gear. Unlike some veterans who wore their service like a badge, Marcus rode without insignia. His leather jacket, faded from years of use, sturdy jeans, and full-face helmet bore no hint of his military past. On these rides, he wasn't Colonel Thompson, hero of 3 wars. He was just Marcus, a man chasing the wind. But as he suited up, a memory surfaced. His first brush with profiling at 16, riding a beat-up bicycle through a wealthy white neighborhood. A cop had stopped him, demanding to know where he'd stolen it. That moment had seared into him the reality that his presence alone could be deemed suspicious. Decades later, the sting lingered. With his gear on and a small pack of essentials strapped to the bike, Marcus fired up the Harley. The engine's deep growl echoed through the garage, a sound that always brought a grin to his face. He eased the bike into the morning light, waving to neighbors sipping coffee on their porches. The streets of Veterans Hollow gave way to open highways, and Marcus felt the familiar rush of freedom as the world blurred past. The wind against his helmet, the hum of the engine, the road stretching endlessly ahead. For these hours, he could outrun the weight of history, the assumptions that clung to his skin like dust. But this Sunday, the open road would lead him into a storm he couldn't outride. On County Road 12, officers Ryan Caldwell and Ethan Brooks sat in their patrol car, parked beneath a faded billboard for a local diner. Caldwell, 36, a Willow Creek native with a chip on his shoulder from a brief, messy stint in the National Guard, sipped lukewarm coffee and scrolled through alerts on the cruiser's laptop. Report came in about bike thefts over in Pine Ridge, he muttered, referring to a wealthier part of the county idly. High as in stuff. Probably city punks cruising out here. Brooks, 29, a transplant from Kentucky with a lingering idealism about police work, nodded but stayed quiet. He'd learned to tread lightly around Caldwell's quick judgments. Any details on suspects? Brooks asked, sticking to facts. Caldwell shrugged. Just the usual types, folks who don't belong around here. The phrase hung heavy, its meaning clear from past conversations. Caldwell had a knack for spotting suspicious characters, often based on little more than their appearance. Brooks had started to see the pattern, but hadn't found the nerve to call it out. Their idle chatter about football and precinct gossip stopped when Caldwell's eyes locked on his side mirror. Well, look at that, he said, a glint of excitement in his voice. Brooks turned to see a lone motorcyclist approaching on a vintage Harley, the rider's helmet and jacket hiding their face. The bike moved steadily right at the speed limit, the rider's posture calm and controlled. What's the deal? Brooks asked, noting no obvious violations. Caldwell's lips curled. That's a pricey bike for these parts. Don't recognize the rider. Let's check it out. Before Brooks could argue, Caldwell started the cruiser and pulled onto the road, tailing the motorcycle. They'd followed for a mile, Brooks watching for any infraction to justify a stop, but the rider was textbook, signaling turns, staying within the lines. Still, Caldwell flipped on the lights and siren, forcing the motorcyclist to pull over onto a quiet stretch of shoulder. No witnesses in sight. The rider stopped smoothly, hands resting on the handlebars, signaling compliance. Caldwell parked the cruiser at an angle, blocking the bike's path, a move straight out of training for high-risk stops. Let's be careful, Caldwell said, unholstering his sidearm with a flourish that felt excessive. Could be one of those thieves. Brooks followed, positioning himself to the side as they approached. Caldwell's voice boomed, sharp and commanding. Helmet off, slowly. Keep your hands where I can see them. The rider complied, lifting the helmet to reveal Marcus Thompson. Gray hair, cropped close, eyes steady with a quiet dignity that caught Brooks off guard. Caldwell, however, seemed unfazed, his stance rigid. License, registration, insurance. Now, Marcus's voice was calm, carrying the weight of someone used to authority. Can I ask why I was stopped, officer? I wasn't speeding or breaking any laws. Caldwell bristled. We've got reports of stolen bikes like yours. Need to make sure you didn't lift it. The excuse was flimsy. Brooks knew the theft reports mentioned modern sport bikes, not vintage Harleys. Marcus nodded, reading the situation with the clarity of a man who'd faced this before. My documents are in my jacket pocket. I'll reach for them slowly. Caldwell's hand hovered near his gun. Just make sure that's all you're grabbing. Marcus moved deliberately, pulling out his wallet with 2 fingers. License is here. Registration and insurance are under the seat. Want me to get those? Caldwell snatched the wallet, barely glancing at the ID. Retired, huh? From what? Doesn't say you're some big shot. Marcus's response was even. That bike's been mine for 35 years, a retirement gift. The papers will prove it. Caldwell's eyes narrowed, his suspicion unshaken. Let's see. Open the compartment, slowly. As Marcus reached for the seat latch, Brooks glimpsed something inside. A folded military patch, maybe an insignia. Before he could say anything, Caldwell lunged. He's going for something, he shouted, grabbing Marcus's arm and yanking him off the bike. The force sent Marcus stumbling, his shoulder slamming into the cruiser's hood. A sharp pain shot through his forehead as it grazed the door frame, blood trickling down. I was getting the registration like you asked, Marcus said, his voice steadied despite the assault. Brooks saw a card fall from Marcus's pocket, a military ID, unmistakable to anyone who'd served. Ryan, that's a DOD card, he said, his voice tight. Caldwell kicked it under the cruiser, dismissing it. Could be fake. These guys always have some story. He pressed Marcus harder against the car, reaching for his cuffs. Stay put. I'm checking the bike. Brooks hesitated, torn between protocol and the growing knot in his gut. This wasn't right, but calling out his partner in the field felt like crossing a line he wasn't ready for. Caldwell rifled through the bike's compartments, tossing out a small pouch of challenge coins and a folded flag item sacred to any veteran. "Careful with those," Marcus said, his tone firm but controlled. "They're from my service." Caldwell scoffed. "Service, sure, and I'm the governor. You don't belong on a bike this nice in a place like this." The words dripped with venom, their implication clear. Marcus straightened, his voice cutting through the tension. "I'm Colonel Marcus Thompson, United States Army, retired. That bike's mine, and I've got every right to ride it." Caldwell's sneer faltered for a split second before hardening. "Yeah, and I'm General Patton. Hands behind your back, Colonel." He snapped the cuffs on, tightening them until they bit into Marcus's wrists. The pain was sharp, but Marcus's mind snapped to old training, surviving as a POW, staying calm under pressure. This wasn't a battlefield, but the feeling of being dehumanized was all too familiar. Brooks watched, his discomfort growing. "Brian? He's cooperating. Let's check his ID properly." Caldwell shot him a glare. "I know what I'm doing. This guy's hiding something." As the situation spiraled, a car slowed on the opposite side of the road. Emily Carter, a 34-year-old nurse in Willow Creek Local, had been driving home from an early shift at the VA hospital. Something about the scene. An elderly black man pinned against a cruiser, blood on his face, made her pull over. She grabbed her phone, pretending to take a call, and started recording, her hand shaking but her resolve firm. Caldwell noticed her and doubled down, shoving Marcus harder against the car. "Think someone watching changes anything?" he muttered, low enough that Emily's camera might not catch it. Marcus's forehead bled steadily now, the metallic scent pulling him back to combat wounds long healed. Yet he stood tall, refusing to break. "This is unnecessary, officer," he said. "I've done nothing wrong and followed every order." Caldwell leaned in, his voice a harsh whisper. "Guys like you don't ride bikes like that around here. There's always something to find." The words laid bare the prejudice driving the stop, stripping away any pretense of law enforcement. Emily's camera kept rolling, her live stream quietly gaining viewers. Among them was a VA doctor who recognized Marcus from a recent checkup, and soon the footage would reach someone who could turn this roadside injustice into something far bigger. The open road Marcus loved had become a battleground, but the fight for his dignity was just beginning. The air on County Road 12 grew thick with tension, the quiet hum of morning traffic replaced by the weight of an unfolding injustice. Colonel Marcus Thompson stood pinned against the police cruiser, blood trickling from his forehead, his wrists aching from the bite of Officer Ryan Caldwell's overly tight handcuffs. The veteran's eyes, steady despite the pain, held a quiet defiance, a resolve forged in the fires of combat and a lifetime of navigating a world that often judged him by his skin rather than his service. Above, the Tennessee sky stretched clear and endless, a cruel contrast to the confinement Marcus endured below. As across the road, Emily Carter's hands trembled as she held her phone, her live stream capturing every moment of the escalating encounter. The 34-year-old nurse, still in her scrubs from an overnight shift at the Willow Creek VA hospital, had stopped on instinct, her heart pounding at the sight of an elderly black man being manhandled by police for no apparent reason. Her camera feed, initially watched by a handful of early morning social media users, began to surge. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands tuning in as the algorithm amplified the raw injustice unfolding. "This is happening right now on County Road 12, she whispered into her phone, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. "An elderly man, bleeding, handcuffed for riding his motorcycle. This isn't right." Among the growing audience was Dr. Sarah Wynn, a physician at the VA who had treated Marcus just weeks before. Her breath caught as she recognized the retired colonel, his face unmistakable, even streaked with blood. She'd heard his stories during checkups, quiet tales of heroism, of leading men through impossible odds, of earning the Congressional Medal of Honor for saving lives under fire. Without hesitation, she forwarded the live stream link to colleagues, one of whom was Captain Nathan Thompson, Marcus's son, stationed at Fort Bragg. Nathan was in the middle of a briefing when his phone buzzed with the message. He opened the link and the world seemed to stop. There, on the small screen, was his father, handcuffed, bleeding, humiliated. "No," he whispered, his voice breaking as his soldiers turned, concern etching their faces. "My dad, Colonel Marcus Thompson." Nathan's composure, honed through years of military discipline, cracked. He showed the footage to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Maria Alvarez. "That's a Medal of Honor recipient," she said, her voice tight with disbelief. "We need to act now." Nathan nodded, his mind racing. This wasn't a battlefield, but it was a fight, and he wouldn't let his father face it alone. He sprinted to the command tent, bypassing protocol to reach General William Carter, a grizzled veteran who'd served alongside Marcus decades ago. Nathan thrust the phone forward, the live stream still playing. "Sir, that's my father, Colonel Thompson. He's being assaulted by local police in Willow Creek County for no reason." General Carter's eyes narrowed as he watched the footage, his jaw tightening. He knew Marcus not just as a soldier, but as a brother in arms who'd risked everything for his country. The sight of him bloodied and restrained ignited a fury Carter rarely allowed himself to feel. "This is an outrage," he said, his voice low but laced with steel. "Captain, assemble a response team. I'm authorizing immediate intervention." Nathan saluted, his heart pounding with a mix of fear for his father and pride in the military's swift response. "Yes, sir." Back on County Road 12, the situation grew darker. Officer Caldwell's frustration mounted as he tore through Marcus's saddlebags, finding nothing but the challenge coins and folded flag he'd carelessly tossed aside. His inability to justify the stop fueled his aggression, as if Marcus's innocence was a personal affront. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" Caldwell hissed, leaning close to Marcus's ear, his words too low for Emily's camera to riding around on a bike you can't possibly afford, acting like you own these roads. Marcus's silence, a disciplined choice, rooted in decades of facing hostility, only inflamed Caldwell further. "Answer me," he barked, slamming his hand against the cruiser beside Marcus's head. The impact sent a fresh wave of pain through Marcus's shoulder, awakening old shrapnel wounds from a war long past. Officer Brooks, standing a few feet away, shifted uneasily. "Ryan, ease up," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's not resisting. We've got his papers. They check out." Caldwell's head snapped toward his partner, eyes blazing. "You want to play soft? Fine. But this guy's not clean. I know it." Brooks fell silent, his training clashing with the sinking feeling that they were crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Marcus, his face pressed against the cruiser's hood, focused on breathing slow, steady, like he'd done in captivity decades ago when survival meant holding on to dignity in the face of dehumanization. Emily's live stream had now reached over 10,000 viewers, the comments flooding with outrage. Veterans recognized Marcus for military ceremonies, their fury palpable in messages like, "That's Colonel Thompson, Medal of Honor, how dare they?" Civil rights advocates and local residents began sharing the video, the hashtag Justice for Colonel trending across platforms. Among the viewers was Pastor James Ellis, a Willow Creek community leader who'd met Marcus at a veterans event. He forwarded the link to every contact. He had his hands shaken with anger. "This is one of our heroes," he typed. "We won't stand for this." At Fort Bragg, Nathan had mobilized a team of 50 soldiers, handpicked for their readiness and loyalty. The motor pool roared to life, 20 Humvees rolling out in a convoy that thundered with purpose. Nathan climbed into the lead vehicle, his mind fixed on his father's face, bloodied but unbroken. General Carter's voice crackled over the radio. "Captain, this is about presence, not combat. Secure your father's safety, but keep it controlled." Nathan's response was firm. "Understood, sir. We're bringing him home." Back at the scene, Emily stepped out of her car, her courage outweighing her fear. She moved closer, still streaming, her voice rising. "This is being watched by thousands of people right now," she called out, her words cutting through the tense air. "Help is coming for this man." Caldwell's head whipped toward her, his face darkening. "Ma'am, get back in your vehicle. This is police business." Emily stood her ground, her camera unwavering. I'm documenting a public incident. You've got an elderly man bleating and handcuffed for no reason. The world's watching. Before Caldwell could respond, a low rumble shook the ground, growing louder with every second. Emily turned, her camera catching the first glimpse of the approaching convoy. 20 Humvees cresting the hill, their tan silhouettes a stark contrast against the autumn sky. The sight was breathtaking, a tidal wave of military might descending on this quiet Tennessee road. "Oh my God," Emily whispered, her voice trembling with awe as the live stream's viewer count skyrocketed to 20,000. Comments poured in. "The Army's here. Justice is coming. Don't mess with our veterans." Officer Brooks froze, his hand twitching away from his holster. This was no routine stop anymore. Caldwell, still gripping Marcus's shoulder, looked up, his confidence crumbling as the convoy fanned out, forming a semicircle around the scene. The Humvees idled, their engines a menacing chorus, their tinted windows hiding the soldiers within. For a moment, time seemed to stop, the air heavy with the weight of what was coming. The lead Humvee's door swung open, and Captain Nathan Thompson stepped out, his uniform crisp, his face a mask of controlled fury. His boots hit the asphalt with deliberate force, each step echoing the resolve of a son determined to protect his father. Behind him, 50 soldiers disembarked in perfect sync, taking positions beside their vehicles, hands clasped behind their backs, their disciplined silence more intimidating than any shouted command. Nathan stopped 20 yards from the cruiser, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "I am Captain Nathan Thompson, United States Army. You are detaining Colonel Marcus Thompson, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, my father, and a national hero. Release him immediately." The words hit Caldwell like a shockwave, his grip on Marcus loosening as the reality sank in. This wasn't just an old man on a motorcycle. This was a decorated officer, a legend whose name carried weight in military circles across the country. Brooks stepped back, his face pale, while Caldwell stammered, "This is a police matter. You've got no jurisdiction here." Nathan's eyes didn't waver. "You lost any claim to legitimacy when you assaulted a hero without cause. General William Carter has authorized this intervention. Stand down or this escalates further." As the standoff hung in the balance, another vehicle screeched to a stop, a sheriff's SUV, lights flashing. Sheriff Thomas Bennett, a 20-year veteran of Willow Creek County, stepped out, his face grim as he took in the scene. His officers, a bleeding elderly man, a civilian with a camera, and a military force that looked ready to roll over anything in its path. "I'm Sheriff Bennett," he announced, striding forward. "What the hell is going on here?" Nathan turned, his voice steady but urgent. "Sheriff, your officers have injured and detained Colonel Marcus Thompson, a retired Army officer and Medal of Honor recipient, without justification. We're here to ensure his immediate release and medical treatment." Bennett's gaze shifted to Marcus, the blood on his face a damning indictment. He saw the dignity in the man's posture, the calm resolve despite the pain, and something in him broke. A mix of shame and recognition that this was no ordinary mistake. "Release him, now," Bennett ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. Caldwell hesitated, his ego warring with the overwhelming pressure around him. "Sir, we suspected," Bennett cut him off. "I said now, Caldwell." Reluctantly, Caldwell unlocked the cuffs, his hands shaking as he freed Marcus's wrists. The colonel brought his arms forward slowly, wincing as blood rushed back to his hands, but his eyes never left his son's. Nathan stepped forward, their gaze locking in a moment of unspoken understanding, pride, pain, and unbreakable love passing between them. As military medics rushed to treat Marcus's wounds, Emily's live stream captured every second, now reaching 30,000 viewers. The comments were a flood of emotion, veterans sharing stories of their own mistreatment, civilians weeping for the injustice, and activists demanding change. "This is what America does to its heroes," one comment read, followed by a heart-wrenching emoji. "Colonel Thompson deserves better. We all do." Sheriff Bennett pulled Caldwell aside, his voice low but furious. "You caused a head injury to a senior citizen with valid documentation. Explain that." Caldwell's bravado crumbled. "He was resisting, sir. It was an accident." Nathan overheard, his voice sharp. That's a lie, and the footage will prove it. He gestured to Emily, whose camera was still rolling, immortalizing the truth for a nation now watching in horror. As medics bandaged Marcus's forehead, General Carter arrived in a black SUV, his presence elevating the stakes to a national level. He approached Marcus, his voice heavy with respect. Colonel, I'm sorry it came to this. You should never have faced such disgrace. Marcus nodded, his voice steady despite the pain. No man should, General. Not me, not anyone. The words, simple yet profound, struck a chord with everyone within earshot, a reminder that dignity wasn't a privilege, it was a right. Emily's stream continued, her narration now a beacon of hope amidst the outrage. Colonel Thompson is free, she said, her voice breaking as tears welled in her eyes. But this isn't over. This is about every person who's been judged, hurt, or silenced because of who they are. The viewers, now in the tens of thousands, flooded the feed with messages of support. Their collective grief and anger, a call for justice that would echo far beyond Willow Creek. In that moment, Marcus stood at the center of a storm, not just of military might, but of a nation's awakening. His pain, his blood, his unbroken spirit had ignited something unstoppable. The fight for dignity was no longer his alone. It belonged to everyone who'd ever been made to feel less than human. And as Nathan stood by his father's side, the convoy of Humvees a testament to their shared resolve, the world watched, wept, and demanded change. 3 months had passed since the fateful Sunday on County Road 12, but for Colonel Marcus Thompson, the echoes of that day lingered like the hum of his Harley-Davidson. The scars on his wrists had faded, the stitches on his forehead removed, but the deeper wound, the sting of being judged, humiliated, and stripped of dignity in his own country, remained raw. Yet, as dawn painted the sky over Veterans Hollow, Tennessee, Marcus rose with the same quiet resolve that had carried him through 35 years of military service. Today, he would ride again, not in defiance, but in reclamation. In his garage, the 1987 Harley gleamed under the soft glow of a work lamp, its chrome restored to mirror perfection after Officer Ryan Caldwell's reckless search. A new addition adorned the bike, a small, understated emblem, an American flag beside a Medal of Honor insignia. Marcus had always shunned such displays, preferring anonymity on the road, but now he embraced them, not as a shield, but as a quiet assertion of his truth. He ran his hand over the leather seat, the familiar texture grounding him as memories of that day flooded back. The blood on his face, the bite of the cuffs, the unwavering support of his son, Captain Nathan Thompson, and the military convoy that had turned a moment of shame into one of reckoning. As Marcus suited up in his worn leather jacket, the morning air carried a different energy. Outside his modest home, the streets of Veterans Hollow buzzed with an unprecedented gathering. What began as a few local veterans offering to ride with Marcus had snowballed into something extraordinary. Hundreds of motorcyclists, veterans, civilians, men, women, young, old, black, white, and every shade in between, had converged from across Tennessee and beyond, their bikes lining the quiet neighborhood like a steel cavalry. They came to stand with Marcus, to honor a hero whose dignity had been challenged but never broken, and to send a message that echoed far beyond Willow Creek County. Injustice would not have the last word. Among the riders were faces Marcus hadn't seen in decades. Soldiers who'd served under him in conflicts long faded from headlines, now gray-haired but still fierce with loyalty. There was Sergeant Carla Ruiz, who had survived an ambush under Marcus's command, her eyes misty as she gripped his hand. "You led us through hell, Colonel," she said, her voice thick. "We're here to ride through this with you." Marcus nodded, his throat tight, the weight of their bond heavier than any metal. Nearby, young riders, inspired by the viral footage of that day, wore shirts emblazoned with "Justice for Colonel," their engines idling with restless energy. This wasn't just a ride. It was a movement. Captain Nathan Thompson stood by his father's side, dressed in civilian clothes, his military leave granted to share this moment. His pride was palpable, but so was his pain. The footage of his father's bloodied face had haunted him, a reminder that even a hero could be reduced to a suspect in the wrong eyes. "You ready, Pops?" he asked. a half smile masking the emotion swirling within. Marcus met his son's gaze, a silent exchange of strength passing between them. "Always, Danny," he replied, pulling on his helmet. As Marcus wheeled his Harley out of the garage, the crowd erupted in applause. Not the raucous cheers of a rally, but a deep, respectful roar that vibrated through the asphalt. Veterans saluted, civilians raised fists in solidarity, and children waved small American flags, their parents whispering stories of the man who'd faced down prejudice with unbreakable grace. Marcus paused, overwhelmed not by the attention, but by the unity it represented. For a moment, he was back on County Road 12, alone against the cruiser, blood dripping onto the pavement. Now he stood surrounded by a community that refused to let such moments define their America. Before the ride began, an unexpected figure approached, parting the crowd with hesitant steps. Officer Ethan Brooks, out of uniform, pushed a modest Kawasaki motorcycle forward, his face etched with nervous determination. Whispers rippled through the riders. Many knew his role in Marcus's detention. His silence as Caldwell escalated the stop. Brooks stopped before Marcus, his voice steady but raw. "Colonel Thompson, I failed you 3 months ago. I stood by when I should have acted, and I let my fear of rocking the boat outweigh my duty to do right. I spent every day since learning, reflecting, trying to be better. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm here to ride with you if you'll allow it." The crowd fell silent, eyes on Marcus. He studied Brooks, seeing not just the officer who'd faltered, but a man grappling with his own flaws. Marcus extended his hand, his grip firm. "Admitting fault takes courage, son. Ride with us and let your actions speak." The handshake, captured by dozens of phone cameras, sent a ripple of emotion through the crowd. A moment of reconciliation that felt as powerful as any victory. Brooks nodded, relief and resolve in his eyes, and took his place among the riders. Marcus mounted his Harley, the engine's rumble cutting through the morning stillness. Nathan took position beside him, and together they led the procession out of Veterans Hollow, a river of chrome and leather stretching back as far as the eye could see. The route was deliberate, winding through the heart of Willow Creek County, past the spot on County Road 12 where Marcus had been detained. What had been a place of humiliation would become a symbol of transformation, a testament to the power of community to rewrite a painful past. As the convoy rolled through town, citizens lined the streets, drawn by news reports and social media buzz. Some held signs, "Welcome back, Colonel, dignity for all," while others simply stood in quiet respect, their presence a rebuke to the prejudice that had sparked this moment. Children perched on parents' shoulders, waving flags, their innocent cheers piercing the roar of engines. Veterans, some in wheelchairs, saluted with trembling hands, their eyes glistening with pride for a brother in arms who'd never stopped fighting. When the procession reached County Road 12, the riders slowed, a hush falling over the group. No speeches were planned, no ceremonies scripted, but the weight of the moment was palpable. Marcus glanced at the shoulder where he'd been pinned, the memory sharp. Caldwell's sneer, the blood, the crushing weight of being seen as less than human now. Hundreds of wheels rolled past, each one a declaration that this ground was no longer defined by injustice. Nathan reached over, squeezing his father's shoulder, a silent promise that he'd never stand alone again. The crowd watching, now thousands strong via live streams, flooded social media with messages of hope, their tears blurring phone screens across the nation. At the ride's end, the convoy gathered at the newly opened Colonel Marcus Thompson Veterans Support Center in downtown Willow Creek. The facility, born from the outrage of that Sunday, offered resources, counseling, and advocacy for veterans, with a focus on those who'd faced discrimination. Marcus had resisted the honor of its name, but community leaders insisted, arguing that his story had sparked a movement too vital to ignore. As riders dismounted, touring the center and sharing stories over coffee, Marcus stood quietly, watching strangers become allies, their laughter and camaraderie a balm for wounds both seen and unseen. He found a moment alone with Nathan, the two sitting on a bench outside the center. "I never wanted this, Danny," Marcus said, his voice soft but heavy. "All these years I just wanted to ride in peace, to be a man, not a symbol." Nathan's eyes glistened, his voice cracking. "I know, Pops. But maybe this is bigger than us. Maybe your ride woke people up, showed them what's worth fighting for. Marcus considered this, his gaze distant. I've faced worse than that day, son. Combat, captivity, prejudice at every turn. But this hurt different. It was my home, my roads, my country. Nathan took his father's hand, a rare gesture for two men bound by military stoicism. You didn't just survive it, Pops. You changed it. Look at these people. Because of you, they're standing together. Marcus followed his son's gaze, seeing riders of every background sharing stories, veterans embracing civilians, a community forged in the fire of shared purpose. For the first time in months, a flicker of hope warmed his chest. Not blind optimism, but a cautious belief that pain could birth progress. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the center, Marcus prepared to ride home, now joined only by Nathan and a few close friends. The procession had dispersed, but its impact lingered, a ripple spreading through Willow Creek and beyond. News networks had picked up the story, the ride trending nationwide with hashtags like Ride with Colonel and Dignity for All. Veterans groups, civil rights organizations, and ordinary citizens shared clips of the convoy, their comments a chorus of resolve. This is America at its best. No one rides alone anymore. But as Marcus fired up his Harley, a new figure emerged from the crowd, unnoticed until now. A young woman, no older than 25, approached with a folded piece of paper in her hand. Her face was streaked with tears, her voice trembling as she spoke. Colonel Thompson, my name's Aisha Carter. Emily's sister. She's the one who streamed that day, who made sure the world saw you. Marcus nodded, his heart tightening at the memory of Emily's courage. Your sister's a hero, Aisha. She gave me a voice when I had none. Aisha's eyes dropped, her hands shaking as she unfolded the paper. A letter, its edges worn from being carried too long. Emily's gone, sir. Last week, a car accident. She didn't make it. The words hit like a grenade, silencing the murmurs around them. Nathan's breath caught, and Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. She wanted you to have this, Aisha continued, pressing the letter into his hands. She wrote it after that day, said it was for you when the time was right. Marcus's fingers traced the paper, his vision blurring. He couldn't read it now, not here, with hundreds of eyes on him, with Aisha's grief so raw. But the weight of it, the final gift from a woman whose bravery had changed everything, broke something inside him. He pulled Aisha into a gentle embrace, his voice hoarse. I'll carry her with me. Always. Aisha sobbed against his shoulder, the crowd watching in reverent silence, their phones lowered, their hearts open to a moment too sacred for cameras. As Aisha stepped back, Marcus tucked the letter into his jacket, its presence a burning reminder of the cost of truth. He mounted his Harley, the engine's roar a steadying force amidst the storm of emotions. Nathan climbed onto his own bike, his face set with determination. We're not done, Pops, he said, his voice fierce. Not until every road is safe for everyone. Marcus nodded, his eyes fixed on the horizon, where the fading light promised a new day. The bikes rolled out, their headlights cutting through the dusk, but the story didn't end there. Emily's letter, unopened, held secrets, perhaps a confession, a call to action, or a vision for the America she'd fought for. And somewhere in Willow Creek, a shadow stirred. Officer Ryan Caldwell, disgraced but unrepentant, watched the ride's coverage from a darkened bar, his anger festering. Would he fade into obscurity, or would his resentment spark a new confrontation? The road ahead was uncertain, its curves hiding challenges no one could predict. Marcus rode on, the letter against his chest, the convoy's echo in his ears, and a nation's eyes on his back. This wasn't just his fight anymore, it was theirs. And as the stars emerged over Tennessee, one truth burned brighter than ever. Dignity wasn't given, it was claimed. Mile by mile, heart by heart, until the promise of justice became a road all could travel.